Hi everyone, I'm very excited to show you what we've been working here at ThreatMate and what new features will be released with version 1.9. The big announcement in this next release is our acknowledgement functionality. A lot of you have asked about it and we delivered it. You can now acknowledge exposures on the discovery dashboard. So you can see here that there is a lot of exposures that we have discovered. You can acknowledge this exposures on the stop level, where you can see that an exposure affects multiple ports. And as you acknowledge the exposure on this level, all the individual exposures for those ports will also be acknowledged. The acknowledgement dialog is very simple. You can select a category, for example, sandbox, and you can enter a note, for example, and once you click acknowledged, the acknowledged exposure will disappear from the interface and you will no longer see it here. So this way you can go through the found exposures and acknowledge the ones that you don't think are impactful to your business, or there's mitigating controls, or for whatever reason you don't think they should be on this interface. You can additionally look at some of the other exposures, for example, the ones that affect multiple devices, such as this one here. You can individually mark some exposures. Instead of all of them, you can now just select 3 of them here. Again, the same idea of the interface. You can create a mitigating control and say, please do not apply. And the reason why you're adding a note and selecting a category is because as you acknowledge, this creates an audit trail of who acknowledged the vulnerability, what message they used, and what category. So now when we go back to the acknowledged interface here, you can see when the exposure was acknowledged and who acknowledged the exposure. As you can see, the user email, the note, and the category. And if you'd like, you can actually edit. For example, if by mistake you need to change the category or you've entered it by mistake, you can do that here and you can enter something else. And then you can immediately see that this takes effect. You can also unacknowledged vulnerabilities. So if you think that those should not be acknowledged anymore, you can go ahead and unacknowledge. So as soon as you unacknowledge them, they'll appear in the interface again. In order to unacknowledge everything, you have to expand the table and say, okay, I think I should unacknowledge everything. So now when you go back to the interface, everything will be shown. To show you an extreme example, let's acknowledge all our vulnerabilities. So I've selected all the vulnerabilities. Let me add a note. At this point, once we acknowledge all the vulnerabilities, we can see that there is 0 indicators of exposure. But we have this handy button here that once you click it, it will show you all the exposures, including the ones that are acknowledged. So by clicking the button, you can trigger back and forth to see everything with the acknowledged or without the acknowledged exposures. The acknowledged exposures also propagate to the security score. Because I've currently acknowledged all the vulnerabilities, you can see that my score has shot to 82 for this day. Since the security score is calculated daily, and I've only acknowledged the past 24 hours worth of vulnerabilities, you can see that only the past day has been affected. You can, again, click on this button and see how you can see before and after, basically from the acknowledgement perspective. The thing that needs to be also mentioned here is that the acknowledged interface changes or replaces completely the baseline interface. So if you had anything in the baselines, and you can see there is no more baselines here, please migrate that to the acknowledged feature, because the acknowledged feature allows you to fine-grain only acknowledge exposures. It doesn't relate to ports. You can still, for example, even though all the vulnerabilities or the exposures are acknowledged, you can still see that the open ports are still shown here, and you can continue to kind of look in your infrastructure from an open port perspective, and still the our recommendation is to make sure you close all the ports that you don't need for business operations. Additionally, we have some interesting tweaks to the interface. For example, here is a port 22 SSH. You can see what host is impacted by this port, what port host has it open, what MAC address there is, what scan group. And before you, that's basically it, right? You have to copy this host and go to the host table. Now we have this drill down button called View Device. And once you click it, it immediately gets you to the device. You can click on the plus, you immediately see all the other ports this device has. So you can immediately investigate and drill down on devices. Either you can be on an exposure or an open port, and you can immediately see, okay, what is this device? What other vulnerabilities it has? What are the banners? For example, if we want to look at banners, you can do that. So you have more quicker access to important information as you do investigate different devices. Outside of the UI improvements that we've added here, there's also a lot of improvements under the hood, especially for both discovery sensor and the endpoint agent. We're now able to discover a lot more vulnerabilities. So please update the discovery sensor. The discovery sensor needs an update. With this update, the discovery sensor gains the functionality to download definitions for new matches of vulnerabilities for automatic definition updates. So basically, no longer you would need to upgrade the discovery sensor when we're releasing new exposure findings, because right now this is what you need to do. So this actually takes us closer to having automatic updates. The agent already works this way. We can update the agent definitions on our side without you having to re-download or reinstall the agent. So this way, the discovery and the agent can gain more functionality without you having to reinstall it, which will really improve the speed at which we can deliver more functionalities to you and more detection capabilities. So in order for this new feature to kick in, you would have to install the new discovery agent. Additionally, we now have authentication. For backwards compatibility, you can see that every discovery and also agent has an API key. We highly recommend that you enable the API key by specifying it in the configuration file. If you don't, it's okay, it's going to work. As you can see, we also allow an empty API key, but in the future, we'll deprecate the empty API keys. We would like every agent and discovery sensor to be authenticated. So this way, things are a lot more secure, and you also have full control of who can upload data to your instance. Only the agents and discovery sensors with the right API key are allowed to upload data to the instance. So let's move to the endpoint agent. The endpoint agent has been drastically improved to discover a lot more vulnerabilities on Linux, Windows, and Mac, with Windows taking the center stage. We're now able to show you server patch vulnerabilities. So if you're missing server patches, we'll show you what exact vulnerabilities this server is susceptible to. And we can also show you workstation Windows Pro and Windows 10 and 11 patch vulnerabilities. For example, Microsoft releases new patch, and you want to know, hey, or a critical vulnerability, and you want to know if any of your devices is impacted by this new critical vulnerability released by Microsoft. Now we can tell you, because not only that we get application level vulnerabilities, such as is your, for example, browser up to date. We now can also tell you if your OS is up to date, what vulnerabilities it has exposure to. So this will allow for you to really understand the posture of your security of your devices. So outside of just making sure that we understand the operating systems and what version they are, now we can also give you specific CVEs related to the OS version. You get this functionality without the need to upgrade the agent. So that just comes naturally by our model of agents get automatic definitions updates. So as soon as we roll in and update your instance, you should be able to see this in your environment. So the only thing we would really ask you is to upgrade your discovery sensor, which will give you access to automatic definition updates for the discovery sensor. One new feature that we also added for a specific customer was the ability to integrate with Purple Night. And Purple Night is a Active Directory assessment tool. With it, you can basically analyze your Active Directory. It creates a score. You can see your Active Directory score. It breaks the score down to different sections here. You can see that. And it also gives you recommendations of what you should do in order to increase the security of your Active Directory. It's a really neat tool. It has a community edition, as you can see here. You can just click and download it. It's free. We highly recommend using it. And after you're done using it, you can upload the results of the scan here just for your convenience. We basically would like to integrate with other third-party products like this. We can become your platform where you save the results. You can track the progress over time. You know, you do an assessment today. You work on remediating some of those vulnerabilities and exposures that it mentions. And then in next quarter, next month, you run it again and you can see the difference. And then you can use that for your own reporting so you can show that you've done a good job increasing the security of your Active Directory. We highly recommend you giving this a try. And with that, I think we conclude all the changes that are coming your way with our next release. And we're looking forward to your feedback. Thank you very much.